Rain fell in slow, steady sheets on the steel roof of the Interstellar Cultural Exchange Center, a squat gray building nestled at the edge of the North Nevada desert. Inside, the air was warm and thrumming with quiet conversation. The pilot program had been running for 7 months. 4 alien students from the Kaldek Confederation lived and studied alongside their human counterparts. Host families, shared courses, team-building exercises, everything had gone remarkably well. Until Tuesday. Ryan Carter stood at the edge of the obstacle course, clutching his left side and breathing through clenched teeth. His shirt was torn, smeared with dust and blood, and his left forearm was bent at a strange angle. Nearby, a twisted metal support beam lay half-buried in the gravel, the result of a miscalculated jump during the team relay challenge. 2 Kaldek students, Velrix and Hearn, stared at him in rigid silence. Their wide, spherical eyes blinked once, then again, with slow confusion. "You are leaking," Velrix said, pointing one of his talon-like fingers toward Ryan's arm. "You are exhibiting signs of structural compromise." Ryan coughed and chuckled weakly. "A scratch? I've had worse." Velrix tilted his head. "This is not a scratch. One of your limbs is misaligned." Ryan lowered himself gingerly onto a crate, sweat running down his temple. "Okay, yeah, it hurts like hell. I think it might be broken." Hearn stepped forward, his voice high and jittery. "You continued to run after sustaining this? Why did you not signal immediate cessation?" "Didn't want to let the team down," Ryan muttered. "Besides, I've had worse." "You have repeated this phrase," Velrix said. "Statistically, how often do you experience skeletal trauma?" "Not often, but you know. Stuff happens." A human medic, a short middle-aged woman named Dr. Summers, jogged over, her bag bouncing against her hip. She knelt beside Ryan and began examining his arm. "Did you hear a crack?" she asked. "Felt something twist when I landed. Didn't sound like a snap, though." Dr. Summers nodded. "We'll run a scan to be sure. You're lucky it didn't puncture through." Velrix leaned closer. "Puncture? Compound fractures," Dr. Summers explained. "When the bone breaks the skin. Very bad. He might have passed out if that happened." Velrix looked appalled. "And yet he jokes?" "Humans do that," Dr. Summers said, wrapping a temporary brace around Ryan's arm. "It's a coping thing." Ryan winced as she tightened the support. "Yeah, laughing keeps me from swearing." By the time the medical shuttle arrived, Ryan's breathing had evened out, but his face remained pale. The Kaldek students climbed in after him, curiosity outweighing their concern. The hospital scan confirmed a clean break in the radius. No surgery required, just a cast and a lot of rest. When Ryan emerged from the treatment room, his arm bound in a sling and his expression tired, Velrix was still waiting. "You are permitted to continue functioning with only one arm?" "Functioning, yes. Basketball, not so much." "I fail to comprehend. You were aware of the risk and still proceeded with the challenge. Is this a cultural necessity?" "It's more of a personal thing," Ryan said. "Pushing through, showing up, that kind of stuff." Hearn appeared behind Velrix, holding a small recording device. "May we document your explanation?" "We are compiling behavior logs." Ryan sighed. "Sure. Just don't make me sound like an idiot." "That may be difficult," Hearn said as he activated the recorder. "Your decisions lack rational safety thresholds." Ryan grinned, then immediately winced. "Yeah, well, welcome to Earth." Back at the exchange center, Ryan was given a week of rest from physical activity. Velrix and Hearn visited daily, peppering him with questions. They seemed fascinated by the idea that pain tolerance could vary not just between species, but from one individual to another. Velrix sat on the edge of the couch, his long limbs folded beneath him. "You stated earlier that you had worse. What does worse entail?" Ryan shifted slightly, adjusting the sling. "Took a fall from a second-story roof when I was 15. Broke a leg. That was worse." "You survived a vertical descent of over 6 meters?" "Yeah, landed wrong. Had a cast for 3 months." Velrix turned to Hearn, who was scribbling notes. "He survived bone deformation from atmospheric descent and continues to engage in voluntary physical risk." "It wasn't atmospheric descent," Ryan said. "It was a roof." And I was trying to impress someone. Hearn looked up. Impress? As in courtship. Ryan rubbed the back of his neck. Something like that. Velrix looked genuinely disturbed. You endangered your structural integrity for mating rituals? I didn't think I'd fall. It was a dumb idea. Dr. Summers walked in with a clipboard. He's underselling how dumb it was. But that's teenagers for you. The next challenge was a cooperative construction project, building a shelter in simulated desert conditions. Ryan was benched from physical tasks but served as team strategist. Velrix and Hearn joined his team again, still intrigued by his decision-making process. As the sun bore down on the mock desert lot behind the center, Ryan sketched diagrams on a clipboard and pointed with his good hand. If you anchor the poles deeper on the north side, the wind won't rip the tarp. Velrix hesitated. And if it does? Then we fix it. But we plan so it doesn't. As the shelter neared completion, a support beam slipped from Hearn's grip, landing heavily on his foot. The Kaldek student froze, his eyes going wide. Ryan rushed over. You all right? Hearn looked down, then back at Ryan. I am uncertain. There is no visible damage, but I perceive discomfort. Dr. Summers stepped in again, scanned the foot, and confirmed only minor bruising. You'll be fine, she said. But take it easy. Hearn looked up at Ryan. Did I react disproportionately? You reacted like someone who's not used to getting hurt. That's normal. Velrix cocked his head. And you are. Used to it. Let's just say I've learned how to deal with it. Later that night, Ryan sat on the porch of the dormitory building, his cast resting on a pillow. Velrix stood beside him, sipping water from a collapsible canister. You humans are resilient, he said, but also reckless. Ryan laughed quietly. Yeah, we don't always think things through, but we try to learn from it. Velrix looked up at the stars. Would you suffer injury again for another's benefit? Ryan didn't hesitate. Yeah, if it meant helping someone else? Definitely. Velrix was quiet for a long moment. We have no true cultural equivalent. Injury is considered a failure of planning. It is not noble. It's not noble here either, Ryan said. But sometimes, life doesn't give you perfect plans. The Kaldek student nodded slowly. The next morning, Velrix and Hearn presented a surprise gift. A custom-made arm brace, designed to stabilize Ryan's healing limb while allowing better mobility. It wasn't medically necessary, but it was a gesture of respect. Ryan blinked at the polished metal and soft padding. You made this. Velrix nodded. We observed your discomfort. This should reduce strain. Ryan slipped it on and flexed his fingers. This is incredible. Thanks. It is to honor your scratch, Velrix said. Ryan looked at him and laughed. I've had worse. The next morning, Ryan woke to a dull, familiar throb in his forearm and the sound of something tapping rhythmically against the window. He groaned, sat up with deliberate care, and peered out. Velrix stood on the lawn, poking the glass with a segmented data stylus. Rain had stopped sometime during the night, but the grass was still slick with dew. Do you knock like a normal person where you're from, or is poking windows standard etiquette? Ryan opened the window halfway, careful not to bump his cast on the frame. Velrix took a step back, holding up a container with a translucent lid. We prepared sustenance. You neglected breakfast yesterday. Ryan blinked at the contents. That's a lot of green cubes. They contain processed keltri root and are nutritionally complete. I appreciate the gesture, but I'm not putting anything in my mouth that looks like aquarium decor. Velrix looked down at the container, then quietly rotated it, as if the angle might make the cubes more appealing. They are mildly gelatinous. That improves digestion. I'm good with toast, Ryan said, ducking back inside. By the time he shuffled into the common kitchen, the other Earth students had already cleared out. He dropped a slice of bread into the toaster and leaned awkwardly against the counter with his good shoulder. The door slid open and Hearn entered, his usually smooth gait replaced by a rigid, uneven step. "What happened to you?" Ryan asked. "I attempted terrestrial dance movement. The strain on my lower limb joints was unexpected." "You danced?" "For 5 minutes. I have concluded that your gravity is excessively unforgiving." Ryan laughed and pulled his toast from the machine. "Yeah, it can be a little clingy." Hearn sat at the table and extended one leg out stiffly. "My discomfort is not severe, but I find it distracting." "You want ice." Velrix entered behind him, still holding the green cube container. "He doesn't want any," Hearn said. "He is not sampled. I know what gelatin feels like. I sat on one yesterday." Velrix placed the container on the table anyway. "Perhaps later." Ryan sat across from them, buttering his toast with one hand. "So, what's on the agenda today?" "Please don't say spelunking. There is a scheduled cultural immersion class," Hearn said. "The topic appears to be emergency preparedness." Ryan took a bite of toast. "Oh no." Velrix's eyes narrowed slightly. "You are concerned?" "Only because the last time someone said cultural immersion, we ended up simulating a food shortage with expired MREs. MREs. Meals ready to exacerbate indigestion." They spent the next hour seated in a conference room that smelled faintly of antiseptic and dry erase markers. A woman from the Nevada State Emergency Services stood at the front beside a projector displaying a bullet point list titled Basic First Aid and Crisis Management. "Today we'll cover trauma triage, CPR basics, and injury improvisation," she said. "Because out here, sometimes help is 10 minutes too far." Velrix raised a hand. What is 10 minutes too far intended to convey? It means you can't always wait for someone else to fix the problem. You have to act. Ryan leaned over and whispered, "Brace yourself for the wild west of healthcare." 2 CPR dummies were brought out, one adult-sized, one child-sized. The instructor knelt beside the larger one and began demonstrating chest compressions. "You want to press hard," she said, "and fast. Think of a rhythm, like a song. Stayin' alive is a popular one." Hearn tilted his head. "You perform life-saving compressions to music?" "Not literally. It's just to time your hands right." Velrix watched closely. "You induced thoracic compression with blunt force?" "That seems invasive." "It is," Ryan said. "But it's better than being dead." When it came time for participants to try, the aliens hesitated. Velrix tentatively placed his hands on the dummy's chest, then looked up. "Like this." "Harder," the instructor said. "You're not fluffing a pillow." Velrix pressed again. A muted creak came from the dummy's ribcage. "Good. Keep going. I am uncertain if I am saving or further damaging it." "That's normal." Ryan stepped up next, his cast resting against his chest while he used his good arm to guide Velrix's hand placement. "You want to go deep enough to keep blood moving. Think of it like being the heart's backup." "I do not wish to be a heart." "Tough." The heart called in sick. The next station involved splinting, using whatever materials were available. Pencils, neck tees, even rolled-up magazines. Ryan tapped the table thoughtfully. "Grab that umbrella," he said to Hearn, pointing to the corner. "And the duct tape." Together, they started fashioning a makeshift leg brace for the dummy. Hearn looked pleased, holding the umbrella steady as Ryan wrapped the tape. "This is structurally sound," Hearn said. "Ugly, but effective," Ryan replied. The instructor nodded. "That's the spirit." Afterward, the group moved outdoors for a simulated casualty drill. A mannequin lay half buried under rubble, a red dye packet slowly leaking beneath it. Small speakers emitted groaning sounds for effect. "Your task is to stabilize and transport the victim," the instructor said, "without causing further injury." Velrix crouched beside the dummy and examined the wound. "This is artificial." "Correct. But treat it like it's real." Ryan knelt beside him. "All right, first stop the bleeding. Use pressure, not more questions." Velrix hesitated, then pressed his palm over the dye-soaked area. "This is contrary to our instinct. We do not touch exposed damage. Get used to it. In emergencies, everything's hands-on." Hearn approached with a stretch of tarp and a pair of rods. I have constructed a basic litter. Nice, Ryan said. Let's roll the dummy gently. Velrix, keep pressure. Hearn, support the legs. They moved in sync, cautious but efficient. When the mannequin was secure, they lifted it together and began heading toward the designated checkpoint. The instructor timed the run. 2.5 minutes. Pretty impressive for a first try. Velrix looked at Ryan. You required no command. You issued instructions without hesitation. I've watched a lot of medical dramas. Observation alone has transferred usable knowledge? Yeah. Also, a few real-life scrapes. Velrix nodded slowly. You are an improviser. That is not a valued trait in my society. It should be. Improvisers get things done. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the desert horizon, the three of them sat on the metal steps behind the dormitory, sipping lukewarm electrolyte drinks. The air buzzed faintly with insects. Do you ever regret your injuries? Velrix asked. Ryan considered the question. Not really. They've taught me what I'm capable of. Hearn adjusted his posture. Your species seems to derive self-knowledge through adversity. Is that voluntary? Not always. But we don't run from it either. I would not like to be broken to understand myself, Velrix said. That's fair. Nobody wants to be. But sometimes you don't have a choice. You either adapt or you stall and get left behind. Velrix tapped the side of his drink in thought. You adapt by continuing forward, even when impaired. Pretty much. I do not believe I am good at that. You don't have to be yet. Silence settled between them, not uncomfortable but full of unspoken calculations. I may request additional injury simulations, Velrix said eventually. Ryan raised an eyebrow. You want to get fake hurt on purpose? I wish to understand how improvisers think. Well, Ryan said, standing slowly, just don't drop a beam on yourself. I'm not ready to be your emergency contact. I have already listed you. Ryan blinked. Wait, seriously? Velrix nodded. I guess I'm flattered. You are the most injured person I know. That implies experience. Ryan chuckled. That's one way to put it. The following Thursday began with a power outage and a broken coffee machine. Ryan stood in the exchange center's common room, staring at the lifeless appliance like it had personally betrayed him. His cast had started itching again, a dull, persistent annoyance he couldn't do much about. He scratched at the edge with a plastic spoon. Velrix entered behind him, carrying a long coil of insulated wire wrapped around one shoulder. Your energy grid has ceased function, Velrix observed. Yeah, Ryan said, tapping the coffee machine once for good measure. Transformer blew up during the night. Probably dust in the lines. Happens sometimes. We have begun assembling an auxiliary capacitor stack. It will not restore full service, but basic lighting should resume. How long will that take? 42 minutes. Possibly less if Hearn ceases arguing with the stabilizer. Ryan leaned his good arm against the counter. If you get the lights back on before breakfast, I'll name a sandwich after you. Velrix blinked. Is that an honor? Depends on the sandwich. Velrix turned to leave, then paused. You require caffeine. I observed your withdrawal indicators yesterday. I'll survive. If I can handle a snapped bone, I can handle a morning without coffee. Velrix hesitated. You speak lightly of unpleasant conditions. It is difficult to determine when you are uncomfortable. That's kind of the point, Ryan said. Makes it easier to get through. By the time the lights flickered back to life, the sun was already high and the day's schedule had shifted. The planned geology expedition was scrapped in favor of indoor exercises. Without power the night before, water filtration systems had stalled and the center's staff diverted their attention to maintenance. Ryan found himself seated at a long table in the workshop, surrounded by 3 Kaldek students, Velrix, Hearn, and a new addition named Eska, whose pale green skin shimmered faintly under the overhead fluorescence. She had arrived only a week ago as part of a rotating observation cohort and had already developed a habit of writing down everything Ryan said, whether or not it was relevant. I was told you used adhesive bandage strips to reattach skin, Eska said, adjusting her recording lens. Is this anecdotal or official? It's official, Ryan replied. We call them steri strips. Keeps wounds closed when stitches aren't needed. Eska tapped her lens. You close lacerations with fabric glue and hope. Pretty much. She looked mildly horrified. You trust this method? Better than letting it flap open. Hearn shifted a tray of tools across the table. Today's task is mechanical logic. We are to disassemble and reassemble one of your terrestrial devices. Ryan eyed the object in the center of the table. That's a toaster. Yes, Hearn said. It has 4 slots. Advanced. Be careful with the heating coils. They stay hot longer than you'd think. Eska picked up a screwdriver and turned it over in her fingers. You have tools for this purpose and yet you burn yourselves anyway? Sometimes curiosity wins over common sense. Velrix opened the toaster housing with surprising delicacy. Your devices are structurally unsophisticated but layered in redundancy. Built to survive toddlers and sleep-deprived adults, Ryan said. Over the next hour, the group carefully dismantled the toaster. Eska cataloged each component in a logbook she'd fashioned from recycled printouts. Hearn became fascinated with the spring mechanism, testing its tension over and over until Ryan warned him not to launch the internal carriage into his own face. Velrix, meanwhile, studied the crumbs collected at the bottom. There's no self-cleaning function? Nope. Then why is it not cleaned? It's a toaster, not a temple. Once reassembled, the toaster looked functionally the same, though no one was brave enough to plug it in. The group moved on to the next assignment, emergency shelter modeling using common materials. Each team had access to a tarp, rope, and a stack of plastic sheeting. Ryan's team set up in the far corner of the room, where the floor was still slightly damp from a slow leak in the ceiling. He knelt down and began laying out the tarp with his good arm. This side needs to face down, he said. Keeps water from pooling underneath. Eska watched him closely. You have experience with these conditions? I went camping once during a storm. Everything that could go wrong did. Did you abandon the site? Nope. Dug trenches. Reinforced the tent with duct tape and sticks. And prayed the lightning didn't like me. Hearn looked up from knotting a length of rope. Your species does not retreat from poor planning. Sometimes retreat's not an option. After 20 minutes, their shelter stood upright, slightly lopsided but stable. Velrix tested the tension of the lines and nodded. This would withstand moderate wind. Unless the wind wants to make a point, Ryan said. Wind does not possess intent. You've never been to Chicago. Eska straightened from the corner. You speak often in metaphors. It complicates analysis. Yeah, Ryan said, but it makes stories better. Before they could start the rain simulation, a loud buzzer rang through the center. One of the maintenance workers had fallen from a ladder in the storage wing, and the building went into lockdown protocol. All external doors sealed, and emergency teams mobilized. Ryan stood quickly, fumbling with the strap of his sling. I'm heading over. Eska blocked his path. You are not certified for medical response. I'm not planning to crack open a ribcage, but I've worked with that guy before. He's diabetic. Stress crash is possible. Velrix stepped forward. You are still recovering. You should not exert. Then come with me and make sure I don't. They found the worker sitting upright on the floor beside an overturned ladder. A toolbox had landed near his leg, but the injury appeared limited to a twisted ankle and mild shock. His breathing was shallow, and his skin had gone pale. He's sweating too much, Ryan said, crouching. Could be low blood sugar. He reached into the man's pocket and pulled out a glucose gel. You mind? The worker nodded weakly. Ryan opened the packet and helped him squeeze the gel into his mouth. Keep swallowing. You'll feel better in a minute. Velrix knelt beside him. His eyes are dilated. Is that a complication? No. That's adrenaline. He's scared. They stayed with the man until the medics arrived. When they finally returned to the workshop, the others had resumed the shelter challenge as if nothing had happened. Eska approached Ryan quietly. You knew the symptoms. You acted without hesitation. I just remembered what to look for. You do not carry medical tools. Only memory. Sometimes that's enough. That evening, the power flickered again, but the backup held. Ryan sat outside on a folding chair, cast resting on a propped-up cushion, sipping a bottle of warm sports drink. Velrix joined him, holding a small tablet. I have recorded 22 instances of improvised triage from your cohort alone, Velrix said. Your species is deeply reactive. We're just making it up as we go. Yet you often succeed. Ryan shrugged. We've had practice. Velrix looked down at the cast. I no longer find your injuries disturbing. They are informative. Glad my pain is educational. I do not mean that cruelly. I know. A breeze stirred dust across the gravel path. The stars above began to edge through the twilight haze, clear and sharp in the desert air. You are not structurally superior, Velrix said, but your tolerance for disorder is exceptional. Ryan smiled faintly. We're good at falling down. Even better at standing back up. They sat in silence for a while longer, watching the sky darken completely. No alarms sounded. No limbs were broken. Nothing caught fire. It was finally a quiet night.